Let's listen in to the opposition leader.
Cut money from infrastructure projects, which is going to make congestion more difficult, particularly in our capital cities and particularly in the outer metro areas where people are struggling every morning you go to work, every afternoon when you come home. Whenever you drop the kids at sport or at school, you're stuck in traffic. And adding 1.5 million people, bigger than the population of Adelaide, over the course of a short 5-year period, at the same time taking money out of roads and taking money out of the infrastructure that would relieve some of the congestion, you're going to make a bad situation much worse. And I think Australians are starting to understand that.
Business Council of Australia says it's calling for a summit to encourage more people to rent properties. Would you support that?
Well, we support whatever process is going to produce an outcome. But don't forget, this government had a job summit where they tricked and cajoled business into coming to the summit, and then nothing happened. They were hoodwinked because all it was an opportunity for the unions to get out there and put their bid in, and businesses were ignored. So I pay on performance, not on the per word basis that the Prime Minister wants you to promise on. This Prime Minister's broken 12 promises in 12 months, with more to come. The energy prices are going up and up, and yet the Prime Minister promised on 97 occasions before the election that you'd see a reduction in your power bill of $275 a year. So I wouldn't look at what this Prime Minister says. I'd look at what he does, or more importantly, what he doesn't do, because that's what's making it harder for families.
What would the opposition like to see at the
Well, let's see the detail of what they're proposing, but we don't want stunts. We want outcomes. The Prime Minister can pick the phone up now to state premiers, to local mayors, to get more land released, to get more development underway, because there's demand for it. And if he has to tip in money for infrastructure, well, that's something he should have provisioned for in the budget, because you can't announce a big Australia policy with 1.5 million people coming into Australia over 5 years, competing with Australians who can't rent a unit or a house now, who can't afford to buy a house now. You're going to put upward pressure on prices, both rents and home prices, at the same time that you're choking supply. This is why Labor, they just can't manage money. And this is what always happens. If you've got a great idea and you want to roll it out, as the Prime Minister thinks he has, then plan for it properly. And if you need to provide support to those councils to develop the infrastructure, to put an extra lane in or an extra sewage plant or whatever it takes to build that new housing development, well, that's all planning that should have been in the budget, but of course it wasn't. And the government now has had 2 budgets since it was elected. We're coming up to the 12-month mark, and still they're cutting money from infrastructure, and they're putting pressure on an already congested environment. It's very hard to reconcile. The thought might be there, but the execution is just not.
What are the costings of your proposed increase to the job seeker income free threshold?
Well, probably about half of what Labor's proposing to their own measure. Now, in relation to the plan that we've put forward on job seeker, I'll make this point. I was at a local business here this morning. It's involved in apprenticeships. They've got first-year apprentices who are leaving because they can't afford their power bills and they can't afford their rent. So they're not finishing their trades where they're currently working. And that's a big problem. The government had no assistance for them. So these are young people, 17, 18, 19 years of age, 20 years of age, who have taken up an apprenticeship as a sparky or as a chippy or whatever it might be. They are getting no assistance from the government. They're not getting $40 a fortnight from the government, and yet the government's been able to find money for the job seeker payment. We've got 440,000 people at the moment, 440,000 positions who require people to work in those positions at the moment. We've got over 800,000 people on the unemployment line, and the government's proposing support to make it more attractive to stay in unemployment. I just think it's the wrong time, and the proposal that we've put forward allows those people to work 5 or 10 hours a fortnight and to get $150 or $300, depending on how much they're earning, into their pocket, which is going to be much better than the $40 outcome. I think the government should consider it. And I just note on the weekend that the Treasurer was supporting our proposal, but Amanda Rishworth was backing it. I don't know who to believe. I presume the Treasurer's got seniority over Amanda Rishworth, but I just wish the government would get their lines together, because this is a policy worth thinking about. Last year we proposed a change which would make it easier for people on age pensions and veterans pensions, that if they wanted to work, they could work more hours without losing their pension. In a tight labour market, that's exactly what you want. You want a greater supply of labour, and particularly for people who, I don't know, maybe they've decided that they've retired too early, or they've got a fixed pension and their bills keep going up, so they need to earn a few extra dollars. At the moment, they're reluctant to do that because they lose their pension. The government picked up that policy from us. They implemented about half of it, and I hope that they can do the same in relation to what we've announced on this in response to this budget.
Mr Dutton, on the electorate of that, we've seen the political party, I guess, play out in the papers today. It's a who might be the candidate. Who's your, I guess, or what kind of a candidate would you like to support?
Well, Dara, I just say that I saw the reporting today. I think what it pointed out was that we've got two excellent candidates who have so far nominated. One who is an established councillor, well regarded, a hard worker in the local electorate. The other, a doctor who works at an emergency department, who is well credentialed, who works hard. And I would think that we're very fortunate to have candidates of that quality, and no doubt the prospect of others who might stick their hand up by the time nominations close at the end of this week.
Mr Dutton, do you stand by the previous government's performance on immigration given the findings of the Nixon review and Parkinson's?
Oh yes, I do. Look, I mean, this process is a joke, and senior people you speak with in the Department of Home Affairs are laughing behind the minister's back. What she's created is a political process. It's a political review, and it's politically motivated with no substance. So I would look past all of that nonsense. You've got a minister, frankly, who, I mean, when you look at some of the comments that she makes in the chamber and outside, basically believes that she's still at university. So I wouldn't take any of that too seriously. The government's got boats on the water. They've got people who are arriving in record numbers on aeroplanes claiming protection when they get here. So I think the government is barely holding our border protection policies together at the moment, and we'll see what transpires over the next few months.